Hi, welcome to the Champagne country in France. We have just ridden stage 9 of this year's Tour de France. It's a pretty gritty stage that's been basically based on Strade Bianche.
And we are at the top of a hill about halfway through the stage. It's called the Côte de Val-Fouillon, and we think this is where it's all going to start kicking off. That has got to stay in.
So stage 9 has been earmarked by lots of the DSs as one of the sort of more significant stages of this year's tour, purely because of the amount of off-roading that's involved. We rode this route yesterday and counted up about 31 kilometres of gravel sections. We can concur, it should be a game changer.
I think it's fair to say that this stage is unlikely to win any rider of the Tour de France overall, but with the gravel sectors, and as we've seen, they're a bit dicey in places, pretty rough, lots of tight turns and lots of loose gravel. It could easily end someone's Tour de France, even if they don't crash out. You lose a few minutes on a stage like this when it's all kind of kicking off. As you can see, it's really steep down there. You're on the wrong end of the race when a move goes, then that could be your GC hopes over.
I mean, I compare it very much to the Strade Bianche in Tuscany. It's a similar amount of climbing with a similar amount of gravel sections over a similar distance. It's going to make for some pretty entertaining viewing. It's a stage of two halves, really. So as you roll out of Troyes, it really heavily undulates for the first 30 miles or so. Then it starts getting a bit more spiky, and just when you think the hard work's done, the gravel unearths itself, does it not?
It does, yeah, and the first gravel section, it comes at a kind of little angle off to the road. They're going to be going really fast at that point, and it's quite an interesting run in. So I think there's going to be quite a few nervous riders. This is a sort of stage that's going to be well suited to anyone comfortable riding on the cobbles, kind of Roubaix type rider.
Yeah, well, having ridden this gravel, every sector of it, I think the worst of it is like the equivalent of maybe a 3-star sector of Pavé in the Paris-Roubaix. I mean, there's nothing awful, but every now and then you get a surprise thrown up where there's a sort of stray rock or, a really sort of deep section of gravel which you could potentially, lose a wheel in or get a puncture or whatever. It's interesting, and they've obviously used France's Champagne region as opposed to the olive growths of Tuscany to replicate that.
Well, I have to say, this area really looks like Tuscany, doesn't it?
It does, yeah.
It's sometimes it just looks like a Tuscany brochure, really. It's quite amazingly similar. Although some of the roads, as we were talking about yesterday, some of those surfaces are really quite gnarly. It's the sort of place you really don't want to crash. So the stones are kind of poking through. Yeah. And it's going to smart if anyone falls off on those, which unfortunately probably are going to.
Yeah,
there's a lot of little technical pieces.
Yeah, having ridden Strade Bianche before, I can honestly say that I think it's a little bit more rustic than gravel roads in Tuscany. Purely, I think, because there hasn't been a Grand Tour ridden over them or a classic race ridden over them.
Yeah, I get the impression these aren't necessarily particularly well used tracks.
Yeah.
A lot of them are kind of farm tracks.
Yeah.
They run around the edges of fields, valleys, kind of up and down vineyards. There's a huge variety of different characters in these tracks and in the route itself, actually.
Yeah, so after we said it initially rolls, then it spikes up and down for a bit, then you see the white roads behind us. And whereabouts are we now, James?
This is Côte de Val-Fouillon. It comes about 107 kilometres into the stage, so that's about halfway through. And this, to be honest with you, is the first opportunity anyone with designs on winning the stage is going to have to make a move and try and make it stick. Hopefully you get an idea behind us that this is a really steep little kicker. It's comparable to anything I'd say in Tour of Flanders. Yeah. Any rider that excels there,
yeah,
enjoy this.
It registered about 20% at the end there on my Garmin, so I think it's about a mile of gravel. Then, because it's so steep, I think they've had to tarmac it. So, as James said, I think this is going to be a decisive point of the route where, if anyone has designs on winning the stage, they're going to go at the bottom down there. and then it continues with another sector of gravel around the corner. So yeah, I think we're sitting where the action will take place.
Yeah, I don't know how open it's going to be because it's only accessible by gravel roads. Hopefully you're going to be able to get here because this would be a brilliant place to watch the race.
Yeah. So we're up the top here now, which we've sort of decided between us is probably going to be the pivotal moment of the stage. We're sitting here, move yourself, fast forward to July the 7th. Who's coming up this hill first?
Got to say, you know, I was thinking this all yesterday. This stage is pretty much custom built for Mathieu van der Poel. I hate to make kind of stringent predictions, but if you were going to predict one rider, I think, you know, that would be him. I mean, he will spend quite a lot of the race looking after Jasper Philipsen, his teammate, in the sprints, but I'm sure he'd like to get a stage for himself, and I am positive he will have this one at least in the back of his mind. Everything about it suits him well. You know, there's rough, technical roads, punchy climbs, hard climbs like this one. You know, they're pretty short, but someone like Van der Poel, with all the power he's got, can make a real difference.
Yeah.
This isn't the only one of these. This is probably where it's going to kick off, but another 10 miles down the road, 16 Ks, there's another one, and it's actually even harder. It's, that's full gravel, very steep. The sectors come thick and fast. As you reach the finish, if you're going into the final third, they come thick and fast, and you know, it's these two big climbs are going to make the difference, but then those sectors, those technical tracks are going to be somewhere where a guy that's got great bike handling can actually make that gap stick.
So a quick recap, July the 7th, stage 9, Tour de France, Troyes to Troyes, 199 kilometres with about 7,000 feet of climbing. Get yourself over here if you want to see an amazing bike race in an amazing part of France.